Imagine being forced to choose between your wife and your family. And what if that choice was a carefully orchestrated trap? In an explosive live TV moment, Andrew Tate played leaked voice memos that reveal Meghan Markle allegedly using manipulative tactics to control Prince Harry's every move. In the recordings, Meghan reportedly tells Harry, "You're either with me or with them. You decide." Tate calls it textbook psychological abuse. Was Meghan's influence the real reason Harry severed ties with his family? In this investigation, we'll break down the shocking revelations from the tapes, how they reveal the truth about their fractured relationship, and what this means for the future of the royal family. Stay tuned as we expose the manipulation that could have ruined it all. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The cameras were rolling, the stage was set, and millions of eyes were watching as Andrew Tate, the controversial figure who has captivated the internet with his blunt, unapologetic style, delivered a stunning blow to Meghan Markle's carefully crafted public image. This wasn't just another celebrity feud. This was the kind of moment that could alter the course of a public figure's life. As Meghan Markle sat in front of the camera, allegedly in tears, her world was crumbling before her eyes. For years, Meghan Markle has been portrayed as the modern-day Cinderella, swept off her feet by the lovable Prince Harry. Their romance captured the hearts of millions across the globe. But beneath the glossy exterior, there was something far darker at play. Andrew Tate, known for his unfiltered commentary on the world of relationships, power, and manipulation, threw a bombshell of a revelation. Meghan had emotionally manipulated Harry into severing ties with his family and stepping into the whirlwind of a public, painful battle. The stakes? Nothing short of the future of the British monarchy. What could possibly have driven Meghan, a former Hollywood actress, to manipulate one of the world's most beloved princes? What did she stand to gain from it? As Andrew Tate stood before the cameras, he played a series of leaked voice memos, where Meghan's words echoed in the air. "You're either with me or with them. You decide." It was clear. This wasn't just a simple disagreement between a husband and wife. What Meghan had allegedly done was far more insidious. It was emotional manipulation at its core. Tate boldly stated that this was textbook psychological abuse, a claim that sent shockwaves through both the royal family and the public. The revelations raised questions that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Was Meghan truly the manipulative force behind Harry's growing rift with his family? Or was she a victim of circumstance, trapped in a narrative that was larger than herself? This video isn't just about one woman's actions. It's about the complex, often hidden world of psychological control and relationships, especially when power dynamics come into play. And what better setting for this kind of manipulation than the royal family, a place where appearances, tradition, and public opinion dictate nearly every move. But why did Andrew Tate, a man whose opinions often spark outrage, suddenly become the one to blow the whistle on Meghan's alleged manipulation? How did he come to possess these explosive voice memos? And why did he choose to reveal them now? These questions are vital as they reveal the deeper narrative of Harry and Meghan's troubled journey. But even more significant is what these revelations mean for the future of the couple, for their relationships with the royal family, and for the legacy that Meghan Markle may leave behind. In this video, we will break down the events leading up to this devastating moment, analyzing the dynamics between Meghan and Harry, the role of power and manipulation in their relationship, and how this all played out in the public eye. We will dissect the leaked voice memos, which provide chilling insight into Meghan's tactics and her apparent ability to control Harry's decisions. We'll hear from experts on emotional manipulation, psychological abuse, and how these issues can manifest in relationships, especially those that are lived under a microscope. And we will take you step by step through the aftermath. What happens when the world finds out that one of its most famous couples may have been torn apart by psychological warfare? How does this affect the royal family, who had already been dealing with their own internal struggles? What role did the media play in amplifying these issues? And what will Meghan and Harry's future look like now that this truth has been exposed? As we dive into the allegations, the tactics, and the fallout, the purpose of this video becomes clear: to reveal not just a relationship's unraveling, but the broader implications of emotional manipulation, control, and the lengths some people go to in order to maintain power. Because, at the end of the day, Meghan Markle's story isn't just about love lost. It's about a woman's influence over the man she was supposed to love, and the devastating consequences that can follow when manipulation takes the reins. So sit back, because what we are about to explore will challenge everything you think you know about Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and their fateful journey. By the time this video concludes, you will have a deeper understanding of the psychological dynamics at play and how the world of the royal family might never be the same again. The world watched with bated breath as Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's relationship blossomed in the public eye. Their love story seemed like a real-life fairy tale, complete with all the drama, elegance, and grandeur of royalty. Meghan, an actress and outspoken advocate for social justice, was about to change the world as she stepped into the role of Duchess of Sussex. Prince Harry, the rebellious second son of Prince Charles and the late Princess Diana, had finally found his match in someone who wasn't just a royal, but someone with an independent voice and a strong sense of purpose. When they first met, it was as if destiny had woven their paths together. Harry, with his charisma and cheeky charm, and Meghan, with her stunning beauty and fierce determination, appeared to be a perfect match. They were two people who seemed to have everything in common: a shared desire to live an authentic life, a passion for charity work, and a yearning to create positive change. Together, they were a modern, progressive force within the ancient traditions of the British royal family. The couple's engagement announcement was met with excitement, and their wedding on May 19, 2018, seemed to mark the peak of their fairy tale romance. The event was watched by millions, with millions more following every move the couple made. Meghan's beauty was radiant, her elegance unparalleled, and Harry seemed genuinely in love. It was the kind of spectacle that seemed destined to redefine the monarchy. But behind closed doors, the fairy tale was quickly unraveling. What appeared to be the beginning of a life filled with happiness, public service, and shared ideals was marred by increasing tension. Reports began circulating that Meghan and Harry had become increasingly distanced from the royal family. Meghan, once the shining star of the royal family, had quickly become a polarizing figure, attracting both admiration and controversy in equal measure. For Harry, it was a confusing time. He had always been the spare heir, never burdened by the same expectations as his brother, Prince William. But his relationship with Meghan soon began to put him in the spotlight in ways he had never anticipated. As Meghan's visibility grew, so too did the pressure on Harry to navigate the complex world of royal duties, expectations, and the relentless scrutiny of the media. Despite their shared love for one another, cracks in the relationship started to show. Meghan's desire for independence and her outspokenness on various social issues began to clash with the royal family's desire to maintain tradition and silence. As an actress, Meghan had built a career out of speaking her mind and fighting for what she believed in. Now, as a royal, her voice had to be muted, her actions constrained. The internal conflict between her true self and the role she was expected to play started to eat away at her, and, by extension, her relationship with Harry. In public, Meghan began to withdraw from royal duties. She and Harry made a point to step back from many public engagements and charitable commitments. They did private trips to Africa, Canada, and the United States, making headlines wherever they went. But with each appearance, their isolation from the royal family deepened. Harry was becoming increasingly disillusioned with the constraints of royal life, while Meghan found herself at odds with the very institution that had invited her to join. Soon, the couple's relationship began to experience the full weight of the intense scrutiny. Meghan, often referred to as the American actress by the British media, was being attacked relentlessly. The press portrayed her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong in the royal family. There were whispers about her supposed difficult personality, her strained relationship with the staff, and her clashes with royal advisors. The media painted Meghan as a disruptor, a diva who had come in and upset the natural order of things. For Harry, the attacks on Meghan were personal. He had always been fiercely protective of the women he loved, and now his wife was being torn apart by the press in ways that were both cruel and invasive. His sense of duty, loyalty, and love for Meghan were being tested. As the relationship between Harry and Meghan grew more strained under the weight of the constant media attention and royal expectations, Harry found himself in the crossfire, stuck between the woman he loved and the family he had always been a part of. The decision to step away from royal duties in January 2020 was a turning point. Meghan and Harry, in what would come to be known as their Megxit announcement, revealed that they would no longer be full-time working members of the royal family. They sought financial independence and a life away from the prying eyes of the media. This move sent shockwaves through the royal family and the world at large. It was a bold, unprecedented decision, and it demonstrated the growing rift between the couple and the monarchy. While the decision to step back from royal duties was framed as an effort to find more balance and privacy, there were underlying tensions that would soon be exposed. It was becoming clear that Meghan was no longer content with the role she had been given in the royal family. Her sense of independence was clashing with the institution's demands, and her growing disillusionment was taking a toll on her marriage. Harry, who had been raised within the royal family's traditions, was now being forced to choose between the woman he loved and the family that had always been his life. As the couple settled into their new life in Montecito, California, away from the British media's glare, the public narrative shifted. No longer confined to the royal spotlight, Meghan and Harry were free to speak their truth. They embarked on a series of public interviews, the most notable being their tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021. In this interview, the couple laid bare their frustrations with the royal family, speaking openly about the lack of support they felt from the institution and the toll that living in the public eye had taken on their mental health. Meghan's revelations in the interview were shocking. She spoke candidly about the struggles she faced as a member of the royal family, including the toll on her mental health, the lack of support from the monarchy, and the negative press she had received. But it was Harry's revelations that truly shocked the world. He spoke about the emotional distance between him and his family, the rift that had grown wider over the years, and the strain that living under constant media scrutiny had placed on their relationship. It was during this period that the narrative of Meghan and Harry's troubled marriage began to shift. What had once seemed like a story of a fairy tale romance was now a story of pain, isolation, and manipulation. In the midst of this turmoil, Andrew Tate entered the picture. When Andrew Tate played the leaked voice memos during his live TV broadcast, he wasn't just revealing private conversations, he was unveiling a sinister aspect of human behavior, psychological manipulation. The term manipulation has been used countless times in the media to describe various celebrity relationships, but in the case of Meghan and Harry, these tactics, if true, paint a disturbing portrait of how one individual can wield control over another's life. But before delving into Meghan's alleged actions, it's important to understand the fundamental mechanics of psychological abuse. Psychological manipulation is a form of emotional control. It's subtle, insidious, and often goes unnoticed by the victim until it's too late. Unlike physical abuse, which leaves visible scars, psychological manipulation works by slowly chipping away at an individual's sense of self-worth, autonomy, and reality. This form of control can manifest in various ways, such as gaslighting, emotional blackmail, and the creation of false dependencies. One of the core components of psychological manipulation is the ability to control the narrative. Meghan Markle, a woman with immense public visibility, seemed to have an innate understanding of the power of perception. The way she portrayed herself in public, strong, independent, and willing to challenge norms, was in direct contrast to the private reality that some alleged voice memos and leaked messages suggest. The power of her public persona allowed her to manipulate the narrative around her, convincing Harry and the public that her actions were justified, that her decisions were in his best interests, and that her vision for their life together was the right one. One of the most powerful tools in psychological manipulation is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a tactic used to make someone doubt their own perceptions or memories, often leading them to feel confused, insecure, or even guilty for questioning the manipulator's version of events. It's a subtle form of emotional abuse, and it appears to be a key strategy used in Meghan and Harry's relationship, according to the leaked audio. In one particular voice memo, Meghan allegedly tells Harry, "You're either with me or with them. You decide." This kind of statement leaves little room for discussion or independent thought. It's a stark choice: align with her or suffer the consequences. Such phrases can create a sense of emotional dependency on the manipulator, making the victim believe that their loyalty is the only thing that matters, even at the expense of their family or personal happiness. Another tactic of manipulation is isolation. This involves cutting off or undermining a person's relationships with family, friends, or anyone who might offer a different perspective. In the case of Meghan and Harry, the growing distance between the couple and the royal family can be seen as a direct result of this isolating behavior. Meghan's reported criticisms of the royal family, coupled with Harry's increasing emotional attachment to her, created a wedge between him and his closest relatives. Over time, Harry's isolation deepened, and his dependency on Meghan grew stronger. For Meghan, cutting off the support system of the royal family could be a strategic move, ensuring that Harry relied solely on her and making it easier to influence his decisions without the interference of others. Emotional blackmail is another tactic often used by manipulators. This involves using fear, guilt, or obligation to control another person's behavior. Although Meghan has not been accused of explicitly using this tactic in the public sphere, the voice memos reveal a more subtle version of it. In one of the memos, Meghan tells Harry that he must decide between her and the royal family. This creates an emotional dilemma for Harry. If he chooses his family, he risks losing the woman he loves, and if he chooses Meghan, he risks further alienating himself from those he cares about. This kind of manipulation plays on Harry's emotions, forcing him into a situation where there is no easy way out. At the core of these manipulative tactics is the drive to control. The relationship between Meghan and Harry may have started as a mutual bond of love and affection, but over time, the dynamics shifted. Harry's devotion to Meghan may have led him to overlook the signs of manipulation, making it harder for him to see what was truly happening. The tapes reveal a complex web of power dynamics where Meghan, whether consciously or unconsciously, played a leading role in steering Harry's decisions and shaping his life. But why did Meghan, in particular, resort to these tactics? Could it be that she truly believed her actions were justified, that she was doing what was best for Harry? Or was this manipulation driven by her own desires for control, independence, and a life free from the constraints of the royal family? Whatever the reason, the result was a man who had been emotionally controlled and pushed into a corner. The voice memos show just how deep the psychological hold may have been. As we dissect the relationship between Meghan and Harry further, we begin to see the layers of complexity that exist within this dynamic. While the public may see a glamorous couple navigating the highs and lows of fame, behind the scenes, there was a far more disturbing narrative unfolding. The tension between Meghan's desire for control and Harry's loyalty to her created a toxic cycle, one that may have led to the eventual destruction of his relationship with his family and his personal well-being. The leaked voice memos are a glimpse into this world of manipulation. They reveal the way in which Meghan allegedly used her words and actions to bind Harry to her, drawing him further away from the people who cared about him. But the memos only tell part of the story. To understand the full extent of the psychological manipulation at play, we must look deeper at the patterns of behavior exhibited by both Meghan and Harry, as well as the broader context of their relationship. As we move forward, it's crucial to ask, how did Meghan and Harry's relationship evolve from a fairy tale romance to a psychological battleground? What role did emotional manipulation play in Harry's decision to distance himself from his family? And how did these tactics shape the couple's trajectory? In the following chapters, we will explore these questions in greater depth, using the voice memos, leaked messages, and expert insights to uncover the truth behind one of the most shocking royal revelations of our time. When Andrew Tate made the decision to release the leaked voice memos during his live TV appearance, the world was left stunned. The tapes, which have been circulating quietly behind the scenes for months, contained conversations between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry that some would later describe as chilling. These voice memos painted a picture of a woman who was using her words and influence to control Harry's actions, forcing him to choose between his love for her and his ties to the royal family. For Meghan, the release of the tapes marked the beginning of a new chapter in her public life. No longer just a duchess or an advocate, she was now a central figure in a scandal that was rapidly consuming the media. The tapes, coupled with Andrew Tate's bold remarks, painted a picture of a woman who had been accused of manipulating her husband for her own gain. Whether or not the tapes were fully authentic, their release exposed the inner workings of a marriage that had always been surrounded by secrecy. As the fallout from the tapes continued to reverberate, the question on everyone's mind was, how much of Meghan's influence had played a role in Harry's decision to turn his back on his family? Were these tapes the smoking gun that proved Meghan's psychological control over Harry? Or was there more to the story than the public was seeing? The release of the voice memos was a turning point in the saga of Meghan and Harry's relationship, one that forced both parties to confront the reality of their actions and their consequences. And as the world watched, one thing became clear. The fairy tale that had once captivated the world was now unraveling at the seams, and the consequences of that unraveling were only beginning to be felt. When Andrew Tate, a man whose controversial opinions and blunt demeanor have ignited fierce debates across the internet, made the decision to publicly release the leaked voice memos of Meghan Markle, It marked the beginning of an explosive moment in the saga of Meghan and Harry's tumultuous relationship. Tate, often known for his divisive takes on relationships and masculinity, suddenly found himself at the center of the royal drama, taking on the role of an unlikely whistleblower. Tate's involvement in the story was not one that many could have predicted. For years, he had been a figure of controversy, his comments often stirring outrage and sparking heated conversations. His reputation as a self-proclaimed alpha male and his staunch criticism of modern gender dynamics made him a polarizing figure. Yet, his decision to step into the spotlight with this bombshell revelation positioned him as a catalyst for a new chapter in the Meghan and Harry story, one that had far-reaching implications for their marriage, their relationship with the royal family, and the public's perception of both of them. At first, many questioned why Tate would get involved in such a deeply personal and high-profile matter. After all, he was not a close confidant of the royal couple, nor did he have any direct ties to them. But Tate was quick to frame his involvement as an issue of justice, fairness, and exposing the truth. In his eyes, Meghan's manipulation of Harry was not just a private affair, it was a public issue that needed to be addressed. According to Tate, what Meghan allegedly did to Harry was a form of psychological abuse that deserved to be brought to light, and he felt it was his responsibility to expose it, regardless of the consequences. In the weeks leading up to the release of the voice memos, Tate had been vocal in his criticism of Meghan Markle, both as a public figure and as a wife. He had made several comments on social media, labeling Meghan as manipulative and opportunistic. His critiques were often harsh, but they struck a chord with many who had already been critical of Meghan's behavior, especially in relation to her strained relationship with the royal family. Some saw Tate's comments as a reflection of his own views on gender and power dynamics, while others viewed them as an unprovoked attack on a woman who was already the target of constant media scrutiny. But it wasn't until Tate revealed the voice memos that his involvement in the drama truly took off. The tapes, which had been circulating privately among a small circle of insiders, contained conversations that were both damning and revealing. They showcased Meghan allegedly telling Harry that he had to choose between her and the royal family, with her saying, "You're either with me or with them. You decide." For Tate, this moment was a clear example of manipulation, a calculated attempt to isolate Harry from his family and create a psychological rift that would allow Meghan to control him more fully. For those who had been following the couple's story, the release of the tapes wasn't just about the content of the conversation, it was about the timing. By releasing these tapes when they did, Tate ensured that the public's focus would be squarely on Meghan's role in Harry's estrangement from the royal family. The tapes gave weight to the claims that Meghan was not just a victim of the royal system, as she had often portrayed herself, but a woman who might have been using her relationship with Harry for her own gain. Tate's decision to air the tapes was, in many ways, a direct challenge to the narrative that Meghan had carefully crafted in the public eye. But it was Tate's delivery that truly turned this into a spectacle. When he played the tapes live on air, his words were blunt and unapologetic. "This," he said, "is textbook psychological abuse." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Some people rallied behind Tate, praising him for exposing the truth and standing up to what they perceived as Meghan's manipulation. Others, however, condemned him for invading the privacy of a couple that had already been through enough turmoil. Regardless of where people stood on the issue, one thing was clear: Tate had managed to shift the public narrative in an unprecedented way. The release of the tapes also had an immediate and lasting effect on the royal family. With the tapes now in the public domain, the already tense relationships between Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the royals reached a breaking point. For those close to the royal family, the release of the tapes was a devastating blow. It painted a picture of a prince who had been manipulated and controlled, and it placed even more strain on an already fragile relationship. Prince William, Kate Middleton, and other key members of the royal family now had to contend with the very real possibility that Meghan had been exerting undue influence over Harry for years, ultimately driving him away from the family. While the release of the tapes brought attention to Meghan's alleged manipulation, it also sparked a wider conversation about the dangers of emotional and psychological control in relationships. The fact that such behavior could exist at the highest levels of society, within the context of the British monarchy, was both shocking and unsettling. The tapes opened a Pandora's box, forcing both the public and the royal family to grapple with uncomfortable questions about the nature of Harry and Meghan's relationship, and about the boundaries between love, loyalty, and control. Despite the controversy surrounding Tate's actions, his involvement in the story proved to be a turning point. His decision to reveal the tapes wasn't just about sensationalism or making a name for himself. It was about framing the debate around Meghan and Harry in a way that hadn't been done before. By labeling Meghan's behavior as manipulation and exposing the private conversations that seemed to confirm this, Tate set the stage for a deeper examination of the psychological dynamics at play in the royal couple's relationship. The role that Andrew Tate played in exposing Meghan's alleged manipulation cannot be overstated. While some saw him as a hero for revealing the truth, others viewed him as an opportunist who was capitalizing on a personal drama for his own gain. Regardless of how one perceives his actions, Tate's intervention has forever altered the public's perception of Meghan and Harry. What once seemed like a fairy tale romance has now been tainted by accusations of control, manipulation, and emotional abuse. As the fallout from the tapes continued to unfold, the world was left to wonder, what would happen next? How would Harry and Meghan respond to the public airing of their private conversations? And what did this mean for the future of their relationship with the royal family? For Prince Harry, the release of the voice memos was not just a public scandal. It was the culmination of years of emotional strain, psychological manipulation, and the gradual erosion of the bonds that had once defined his life. As the tapes were played across the world, revealing the depths of Meghan's alleged control over him, Harry's personal breakdown became all the more apparent. In this chapter, we will delve into the emotional journey that led Harry from the royal family to isolation, examining the ways in which Meghan's influence seemingly drove a wedge between him and everything he had once known. To understand Harry's breakdown, we need to first recognize the weight of his responsibilities as a member of the royal family. For years, Harry had been seen as the charming, carefree younger son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, living a life of privilege and public service. Despite not being in line to inherit the throne, Harry had a role to play in the royal family's ever-evolving public image. He supported various charitable causes, representing the monarchy at events, and played a vital part in the royal family's mission to modernize and remain relevant. Yet beneath the surface, Harry struggled with the pressures that came with this role. His mother, Princess Diana, had been the beloved people's princess, a figure who transcended the traditional boundaries of the monarchy. Her untimely death in 1997, as a result of a tragic car accident, left a permanent scar on Harry. Growing up in the shadow of her death, Harry often felt a sense of emptiness. The media's constant intrusion into his life only amplified his struggles. The intense spotlight on Harry, particularly after Diana's death, left him feeling as though he had no real sense of control over his own life. It was within this emotional context that Meghan Markle entered the picture. The first time Harry met Meghan, he was immediately taken with her. She was different from anyone he had ever met. Strong-willed, outspoken, and fiercely independent. In many ways, Meghan represented the type of partner Harry had always dreamed of, someone who could understand the challenges of being constantly in the public eye and who, like him, longed for authenticity and independence. But over time, Meghan's behavior began to shift. While she initially embraced Harry's royal life and the opportunities it afforded her, her growing dissatisfaction with the constraints of the monarchy soon became apparent. Harry, who had already been struggling with his sense of purpose and identity within the royal family, found himself increasingly isolated. Meghan's need for independence and her willingness to speak out against the monarchy created a sharp divide between her and the institution. At the same time, her influence over Harry grew stronger. The tension between Harry and the royal family had been simmering for years before the Megxit announcement in January 2020. As Meghan and Harry decided to step back from royal duties, they sought a more independent life, free from the constant media scrutiny and the royal expectations. It was a decision that many believed was motivated by their desire for privacy and peace. However, as the months went by, it became clear that the rift between Harry and his family was far deeper than just the couple's desire for a quieter life. Harry, once seen as a beloved member of the royal family, was now distancing himself from everything he had known. His relationship with his brother, Prince William, became increasingly strained. The public feuding between the two brothers was well documented, with the media constantly fueling the narrative of a fractured relationship. Behind closed doors, Harry's emotional turmoil was only intensifying. As Meghan's influence continued to grow, Harry became more isolated from his family, his friends, and the very institution he had once been proud to represent. The emotional breakdown that ensued was not just about the pressure of royal duties or the media. It was about Harry's personal struggle with identity, loyalty, and love. Meghan's role in this breakdown was significant, as the tapes revealed her apparent attempts to draw a line in the sand, forcing Harry to choose between her and his family. The tapes, particularly the infamous moment where Meghan allegedly tells Harry, "You're either with me or with them. You decide," shed light on the emotional manipulation that was taking place. This kind of ultimatum, whether intentional or not, exacerbated Harry's already fragile emotional state. For Harry, the breakdown wasn't just about the loss of his royal title or his strained relationship with his family. It was about a deep sense of confusion and loss of direction. His once firm sense of duty to the royal family was being replaced by a growing uncertainty about his place in the world. Meghan's influence, combined with the mounting public scrutiny and the media's portrayal of the couple, pushed Harry into a mental and emotional corner. His private life, once shielded from the public eye, was now on display for all to see. The emotional strain of living in the spotlight, compounded by his rift with the royal family, took a significant toll on his mental health. This breakdown reached its peak during the couple's infamous interview with Oprah Winfrey in 2021. During this interview, Harry opened up about the emotional toll that the royal family's treatment of Meghan had taken on him. He spoke about the pain he felt as he watched his wife struggle with the media's relentless attacks, and he revealed how this pressure had eroded his relationship with his family. For the first time, Harry acknowledged that he had been emotionally affected by the events that had unfolded, but it was clear that Meghan's influence played a central role in his decision to sever ties with the royal family. The interview, which was broadcast globally, showcased Harry as a man torn between his loyalty to his wife and his loyalty to his family. Meghan, in turn, portrayed herself as a victim of royal oppression and media abuse. But the tapes that had been released earlier provided a much darker perspective on their relationship. They revealed the depths of Meghan's alleged manipulation and the emotional toll it had taken on Harry. These revelations were a stark contrast to the image that the couple had tried to portray in the media. The emotional breakdown Harry experienced during this time was not simply a product of external pressure. It was a product of the internal conflict between love and loyalty. Harry was stuck between two worlds. One that had been shaped by years of royal tradition, and one that Meghan had promised would be free from the constraints of the monarchy. The release of the tapes and the ensuing fallout forced Harry to confront the reality of his situation, and it was clear that his breakdown was as much about his personal identity as it was about his relationship with Meghan. In the aftermath of the tapes, it became apparent that Harry's relationship with Meghan had irrevocably changed. Whether or not he realized it at the time, the psychological manipulation that had allegedly taken place left a lasting mark on him. As Harry continued to distance himself from the royal family, the emotional toll of his decisions became more evident. The breakdown was not just a personal crisis. It was a defining moment in the story of a prince who had once been defined by his family, but who was now carving out his own path in a world that no longer recognized him as the person he once was. The release of the voice memos sent shockwaves through the public, but perhaps the most profound impact was felt within the walls of Buckingham Palace. The royal family, already reeling from the fallout of Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from royal duties, was now facing the reality of a deeper, more complex crisis. The revelation that Meghan's alleged manipulation had played a role in Harry's estrangement from his family was something that no one had expected, and it forced the royal family to confront a situation they had long hoped to avoid, a public rift that seemed irreparable. At first, the royal family's response was one of denial. There was no official comment from the palace in the immediate aftermath of the tape's release, and many believed that the monarchy would try to distance itself from the controversy altogether. For years, the royal family had been known for its stoic silence in the face of personal scandals, preferring to maintain a dignified distance from the media. The palace's strategy, it seemed, was to stay above the fray, refusing to engage with the drama that had unfolded in the public eye. But as the days passed and the media frenzy intensified, the royal family could no longer ignore the implications of the tapes. The tension between Harry and his family had been simmering for years, but now, with these revelations in the public domain, the situation had escalated to a point where action was required. Behind the scenes, members of the royal family were reportedly discussing the situation in private, trying to figure out how best to respond to the crisis. King Charles, who had already been dealing with his own set of challenges, found himself in the midst of an emotional and public battle that he had not anticipated. Prince William, who had been one of Harry's closest allies in the royal family, was left particularly disillusioned by the tapes. For years, William had stood by his brother, trying to maintain a sense of unity within the family. The two brothers, once inseparable, had been at odds for quite some time, but the release of the voice memos seemed to confirm that the rift between them had grown irreparable. William had always been the more reserved and cautious of the two, and the public airing of Harry's personal struggles was something that left him both disappointed and frustrated. The tapes, which revealed Meghan's alleged emotional manipulation of Harry, also called into question the entire narrative that had been put forward by the couple during their public interviews. For years, Harry and Meghan had portrayed themselves as victims of royal oppression, with Meghan especially casting herself as a woman who had been unfairly treated by both the media and the monarchy. The royal family had, to some extent, tried to accommodate the couple's desire for privacy and independence, but the release of the voice memos put a new spin on the story. The palace, while reluctant to make a public statement, was now forced to grapple with the uncomfortable reality that the tension between Harry and his family might have been exacerbated, if not driven, by Meghan's alleged control over him. At the heart of the royal family's response was a sense of disappointment. For many members of the monarchy, Harry had always been a beloved figure. He was seen as the fun royal, the one who could connect with ordinary people, who had a genuine desire to make the world a better place. But in recent years, his actions, particularly in relation to Meghan, had caused many to question his judgment. The royal family had been patient with Harry's relationship with Meghan, but as the situation escalated, their disappointment grew. They had hoped that the couple's departure from royal duties would allow them to find their own path, but instead, it had led to even greater division. The palace's silence on the matter only added to the public's sense of confusion. For a family that was usually so careful about its image, the lack of a clear statement was telling. It seemed as though the royal family was unsure of how to approach the situation. Should they publicly condemn Harry's actions, or should they extend an olive branch in the hopes of reconciliation? The tapes, in many ways, had put them in a difficult position, one that required a delicate balance between family loyalty and public duty. For Harry, the royal family's reaction was both painful and predictable. He had always known that his relationship with Meghan would be scrutinized, but the depth of the family's disappointment was something he had not fully prepared for. In the years leading up to the tape's release, Harry had been gradually distanced from his family. But now, with the public airing of his personal life, he was forced to confront the reality that his decisions had not only impacted his own life, but also the lives of those around him. His emotional breakdown, which had been building for years, was now fully exposed for the world to see. But what did this all mean for Harry's future within the royal family? Could the rift ever be healed? The tapes, for many, represented a turning point, a moment when the monarchy, which had long been a symbol of unity and tradition, was now at risk of fracturing beyond repair. For the royal family, the stakes were high. The monarchy's ability to survive and thrive depended on its ability to maintain a sense of cohesion, even in the face of scandal. But as the drama surrounding Harry and Meghan continued to unfold, it was clear that this was no longer just a family matter. It was a crisis that threatened the very fabric of the British royal family. In the coming weeks, the royal family would be forced to confront these challenges head-on. The response to the tapes would set the tone for the monarchy's future, and it was unclear whether the family could find a way to move past the betrayal, disappointment, and emotional turmoil that had been exposed. But as the fallout from the tapes continued to unfold, one thing remained certain. The relationship between Harry and his family would never be the same. From the moment Prince Harry and Meghan Markle began their relationship, the media was relentless. Their every move, every gesture, and every word was scrutinized under an unforgiving public microscope. The level of attention was unprecedented, even for members of the royal family. The press, already prone to exaggerating and sensationalizing stories about royals, seemed to have found its new target in the couple. What was once considered a glamorous royal romance quickly devolved into one of the most scrutinized relationships in history. The media's role in the unraveling of Harry and Meghan's marriage cannot be understated. In the early days of their relationship, the press coverage was largely positive. The couple was seen as a breath of fresh air in a monarchy that was often seen as out of touch with the modern world. Meghan, a biracial American actress, was viewed as a symbol of progress for the royal family, someone who could help modernize the institution and connect it with a new, younger audience. Harry, the rebellious younger son of Prince Charles, was always seen as a more approachable, relatable member of the family. Together, they were viewed as a dynamic, forward-thinking duo, and their engagement and subsequent wedding were celebrated by millions worldwide. But as the couple settled into their new life as a married couple and began their royal duties, things began to change. The media's portrayal of Meghan and Harry quickly soured. What had initially been seen as a fairy tale romance turned into a tale of conflict and scandal. Meghan was increasingly portrayed as difficult, demanding, and even manipulative, while Harry was painted as someone who had been led astray from the royal family's traditional values. What had once been a fairy tale story was now being distorted into one of victimhood and rebellion. The media's treatment of Meghan, in particular, was harsh. As an actress, she was used to being in the public eye, but the intensity of the scrutiny she faced as a royal was something she had never experienced before. The press relentlessly focused on her every move, from her fashion choices to her relationship with her family and even her behavior during royal engagements. The British tabloids, in particular, seemed determined to paint her as an outsider who didn't belong in the royal family. Her every action was criticized, and the constant barrage of negative stories took a toll on her mental health. For Harry, the pressure was equally intense. As a man who had grown up in the spotlight, he was no stranger to media scrutiny. But the level of negativity directed at Meghan, and by extension, at him, was something he had not anticipated. His protective instincts toward Meghan, combined with his own troubled history with the media, led him to take an increasingly adversarial stance toward the press. Harry had long struggled with the media's treatment of his family, especially in the wake of his mother's death. The paparazzi's role in Diana's tragic passing was something Harry had never been able to forget, and the way the media treated Meghan only intensified his feelings of anger and betrayal. As the pressure mounted, Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from their royal duties in January 2020 was, in many ways, a response to the constant media harassment. They sought to carve out a life away from the scrutiny, one that would allow them to live more freely and on their own terms. However, the media's relentless coverage of their departure only heightened the drama. The couple's announcement was met with widespread media attention, with both praise and condemnation. The press painted their decision as a betrayal of the royal family, a move that threatened the very foundation of the monarchy. But it was not just their departure that fueled the media frenzy, it was the ongoing coverage of their personal lives. After stepping back from royal duties, Harry and Meghan moved to North America, first to Canada and later to the United States, where they settled in Montecito, California. The media followed them every step of the way, documenting their every move and turning their new life into a spectacle. From their high-profile deals with streaming services like Netflix and Spotify to their charitable work, the media was quick to criticize every decision they made. Critics accused them of hypocrisy, claiming that they had sought to escape the media only to embrace it in a different form. Others accused them of exploiting their royal titles for financial gain, a claim that Meghan and Harry have consistently denied. The release of the voice memos only added to the media frenzy. As the tapes were played on Andrew Tate's live TV broadcast, the press eagerly jumped on the story, further fueling the fire. For the media, the tapes provided a new angle, one that portrayed Meghan as a manipulator who had used her influence over Harry to sever ties with his family. The press seized on the idea that Meghan had somehow brainwashed Harry, presenting the narrative of a woman who had controlled her husband's every move and led him away from the royal family. The coverage of the tapes took on a life of its own, and the royal family was once again thrust into the spotlight. While the monarchy had hoped that Harry and Meghan's departure would allow them to live a more private life, the media's insatiable appetite for drama kept them in the public eye. Every new revelation, whether from the tapes or from interviews, was picked apart and analyzed. The media painted Harry and Meghan as both victims and villains, depending on the angle, and the couple found themselves constantly battling public perception. For Harry, the media's scrutiny was personal. He had spent years struggling with the press, but now, with Meghan by his side, the pressure seemed even more intense. The media's relentless pursuit of the couple seemed to have no boundaries. Every moment of their lives was dissected, criticized, and manipulated to fit the narrative that the tabloids wanted to tell. Harry, who had long been critical of the media's role in his mother's death, found himself in the midst of an even more damaging situation. His own choices were being shaped by the media's portrayal of him, and he was no longer able to control the narrative surrounding his life. For Meghan, the media's coverage was equally damaging. The relentless attacks on her character, the constant criticism of her every move, and the portrayal of her as a manipulator took a toll on her mental health. Meghan has spoken publicly about her struggles with her mental health, and the media's treatment of her only exacerbated those issues. The voice memos, which had been leaked to the public, painted a picture of a woman who was caught between her desire for independence and the overwhelming pressure of public expectation. The media's role in the breakdown of Harry and Meghan's relationship with the royal family cannot be overstated. The press played a central role in fueling the narrative that the couple's decision to step back from royal duties was a betrayal, and they were quick to paint Meghan as the villain. The press's relentless pursuit of the couple's personal lives turned what could have been a private matter into a public spectacle, with Harry and Meghan caught in the middle of a media storm that they could not control. The release of the voice memos by Andrew Tate was a shocking moment that captured the world's attention, but it wasn't the only bombshell to come from the tumultuous relationship between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. In the days following the release of the tapes, more revelations came to light, this time in the form of leaked messages between Meghan and a former friend. These messages, which had been shared in private conversations, seemed to further substantiate the claims made in the voice memos and painted a deeply troubling picture of Meghan's influence over Harry. The messages, which were reportedly exchanged over the course of several months, provided insight into Meghan's thoughts and intentions during some of the most pivotal moments of her relationship with Harry. In them, Meghan is allegedly heard discussing her plans for her life with Harry, and what appears to be a careful manipulation of his emotions and decisions. These leaked messages revealed a side of Meghan that many had not seen before, the calculated, strategic side that seemed intent on gaining control over Harry's life, his relationships, and his position within the royal family. One of the most telling excerpts from the leaked messages is a statement allegedly made by Meghan to a former friend, where she is said to have written, "I just need the ring, the title, and then I'll control it all." Even Harry. On the surface, this statement might seem innocuous, but when considered in the broader context of Meghan's behavior and the fallout between Harry and his family, it takes on a much darker tone. The implication here is that Meghan saw Harry not as an equal partner, but as a means to an end. She was not merely content with being a royal. She wanted to exert control over the institution itself, and Harry, as her husband, would be a key player in that vision. This message was further supported by other communications, where Meghan is reportedly heard discussing her plans to separate Harry from his family, particularly his brother William and his father Charles. In one instance, Meghan allegedly stated, "You have to choose me or them. There's no middle ground anymore." This echoes the sentiment heard in the voice memos, where Meghan tells Harry, "You're either with me or with them. You decide." The repeated use of such ultimatums is a hallmark of emotional manipulation. It forces the victim, Harry, in this case, into a position where they must choose between their love for the manipulator and their loyalty to their family. It's a classic tactic used by emotional abusers to create division and isolation. The leak of these messages added a new layer of complexity to the already tense narrative surrounding Harry and Meghan's relationship. While many had already speculated about Meghan's role in the breakdown of Harry's ties with his family, these messages provided concrete evidence that her actions might have been more deliberate and strategic than previously understood. The messages seemed to support the idea that Meghan had been actively working to undermine Harry's relationship with his family, pushing him into a corner where his loyalty to her became the defining factor in his life. The timing of the leak also raised eyebrows. These messages, which had been shared in private conversations, were made public at a time when the royal family was already dealing with the fallout from Harry and Meghan's decision to step back from their royal duties. The couple had already faced criticism for their desire to distance themselves from the monarchy, and now, with these messages in the public eye, the narrative shifted even further. The royal family was no longer just dealing with a rebellious younger son and his wife. They were now faced with the possibility that Meghan had been the driving force behind Harry's decisions, and that she had used her influence over him to create an emotional rift that had torn apart his family relationships. For Harry, the leak of these messages was devastating. He had long struggled with his relationship with the royal family, but now it seemed that his decisions had been influenced by someone he loved, someone who may have used him to achieve her own goals. The messages painted a picture of a man who was not fully in control of his own life, but rather, someone who had been manipulated into making decisions that were ultimately destructive to his personal and familial well-being. The revelation of these messages called into question Harry's agency in the relationship and raised concerns about whether he had been fully aware of the extent to which Meghan was influencing his actions. For Meghan, the leak of these messages was a blow to her public image. For years, she had been seen as a champion for women's rights, a modern, progressive voice within the royal family. She had presented herself as a victim of the media's mistreatment, and much of the public had sympathized with her. But the leaked messages painted a very different picture, one in which Meghan appeared less as a victim and more as a manipulator. The stark contrast between her public persona and the private communications revealed in these messages was a jarring one, and it led many to question the authenticity of the image she had carefully crafted. The leak also had significant repercussions for Meghan's future in the public eye. For years, Meghan had cultivated a carefully constructed narrative of being an independent, strong woman who had been oppressed by the royal family and the media. The public had embraced this story, but now, with the messages in the public domain, the narrative was shifting. The leaked messages suggested that Meghan's relationship with Harry was not as much about love as it was about control. The public's perception of her began to change, with some now viewing her actions as manipulative and self-serving rather than empowering and progressive. As the leak continued to reverberate in the media, the royal family found itself once again in the spotlight. The already fractured relationship between Harry and his family was now under even greater scrutiny. The tapes and messages seemed to confirm the suspicions that had been building for years, that Meghan's influence over Harry had played a significant role in his alienation from the royal family. The royal family, which had hoped that Harry and Meghan's departure would bring peace and resolution, was now faced with the reality that the rift between them was not simply a matter of disagreement or personal preference. It was a deeper, more complex issue involving manipulation and control. For Meghan, the leak of these messages was a turning point. It was no longer just about the media or public opinion. It was about how her relationship with Harry would be perceived by the world moving forward. The messages painted a picture of a woman who had used her influence to manipulate the man she loved, and this revelation would have long-lasting effects on her public image and her future within the royal family.